With my presentation today, I'd like to go through some of the major SAS programming language improvements introduced by SAS 9 that some of you might have missed. The emphasis will be mainly on changes or additions that made, in my opinion, mine and every SAS programmer life a better and happier programmer life. This is the agenda with a summary of topics I'd like to cover today, starting with a very brief history of SAS and its evolution. Then I will provide some examples of what are, in my opinion, again, good programming languages improvement and occur with SAS 9. Before discussing such improvements introduced with SAS 9, let me do a bit of SAS. Let me give a lesson on SAS history. As most of you are aware, the first SAS version was released now almost 50 years ago. Since then, what was called a statistical analysis system became an analytics platform supporting a wide range of business. Among the versions I had the pleasure to use, I like to mention the availability of SAS Windows platform in the early 90s, the availability of the ODS, the output delivery system in SAS version 8, making to SAS a big jump on reporting features, improving the way SAS, the SAS reporting features. Then the first SAS 9 was released in 22, making SAS 9 the longest running version as of today. Then with the latest version released in 2013, the SAS 9.4, that I guess most of you are currently using. With the maintenance, with the last maintenance being with the last maintenance release last August, the maintenance 7. And myself, I started now a while ago on the VMS operating system, where I did learn SAS starting with version 5. I believe most, if not all, companies are now running SAS 9.4, probably on different maintenance. If not, the following graph could help you understanding how old and eventually how obsolete is the SAS version you are using. This is coming from a very popular SAS blog. At Starter, for example, we are using the second last release maintenance, that is the maintenance 6. Let's have now a quick look at some of my preferred enhancements. One of the things I like more when new SAS versions are released is the availability of a new function that can help make more efficient programs. Things that maybe before you were doing by developing either your own macros or by combining several functions and statements to get the desired outcomes become very often in the new releases a function. The example I like more is the median function that surprisingly was not available until SAS 9. Or at least that's my understanding. So new character function, search and compare character strings, in addition to concatenating character strings, have been added. Or new functions that were usually available in other languages or procedure, like the coalesce in SQL, or the entire family of the v function. Or you have now a set of functions where you can better search for text patterns, including counting occurrences, for example, with the count function. I won't provide example of all function with my presentation, but just to give you an idea, let's look at least at a couple of them. So with the first one, are programmers still using trim or left or a concatenation of those functions to concatenate strings? There is nothing wrong with it, but the code may be quite difficult to read when you need to concatenate several strings and variables. And now with SAS 9, with a family of cat function, in particular the catx function, not only you can shorten the code as shown in the sample here, but you can automatically eliminate redundant delimiters. Also, numeric variables are automatically converted to a string by using the best 12 format without having a note in the log. Or with the v function, it's an entire set of functions that allow the programmer to query variables, attributes within the data step without having to hard-code the information, or without having to do a secondary step to incorporate, for example, data extracted from POR contents. In the example in this slide, assume you have some variable with an assigned user format to denote the meaning of the numeric code. You can automatically create, using an array, a set of variables containing the decoded version by dynamically query the format attribute using the v format function, and then apply the format. The following is actually a shorter version using the another v function. Another, according to me, nice features with the SAS function, with the new SAS function, which I think it has been also added with SAS 9, is the ability of using the so-called function modifier as an additional argument to modify the normal behavior of the SAS function. It is the case, for example, of the compress function, a function that was historically used to remove all spaces from a string. The function now not only accepts a second argument where you can specify the list of characters you want to remove or compress, but you can, by using a further argument, the modifier, specify an entire set of an entire family, let me say, of characters to remove. In this slide, for example, the p in the compress function, this modifier will remove all punctuation from the specified string. So in the string here, example, the comma and the semicolon. Among the new syntax features added in SAS 9, I like a number of, let me call, shortcuts added, for example, for the set command in SAS 9.2. Like the use of columns as a wildcard to set all data sets starting with the same prefix, as in this example, where I set all in one shot all supplemental SDTM qualifier dataset, or a range of datasets. Then other nice features where you can use some sort of shortcut, it's the in Boolean operator that now allows some shortcuts, such as the specification of a range of values. Last but not least, the availability of new formats and formats to support the ISO 8061 format for date and time, to support, for example, the some 3D SCTM conversion. These formats and the formats were only added starting with SAS 9.2. Another good features that may require a separate speech, it's the addition of the hash objects in SAS 9.1. And this represents a great feature for lookup facility, especially when you have to deal with a big data set, as the hash objects represent the first in-memory data structure accessible from the data set. For example, here I did a test to compare the use of hash objects against two traditional alternatives in SAS to search and extract from a large data set, like let's say 20 million of records. From this simple test, you can see how faster are the hash objects compared, for example, to traditional SQL or merge statement. However, in my opinion, this technique should be used at your own risk, especially if the code has to be understood by a reviewer, an FTI reviewer, if your code will be part of a submission, as the use of the hash objects require the use of, let me say, some non-traditional SAS syntax, as I highlighted here in the example. Another great features added with SAS 9, or improved in SAS 9, is the pair regular expression. Although very similar SAS regular expression were already available in earlier version. This is a very powerful technique for advanced string pattern search. Many of these string processing tasks can be performed with traditional character function, but the pair regular expression provide a more compact solution. But like for the hash object, you may maybe carefully consider the use of such a compact code if the program needs to be part of a submission package. So, for example, you could write a regular expression to look for 4-digit, a dash. If your string contains 4-digit, a dash, 2-digit, a dash, followed by again by 2-digit. To check if, for example, a variable containing date in STM format is a complete date. So using the ISO format, the complete ISO format, before converting it into a SAS date. Let's now have a quick look at some cool stuff added to the SAS macro language. The first one is relatively new. It's a relatively new one, as it became available with one of the latest maintenance, the SAS 9.4 maintenance 5, so 2 maintenance ago. And as I mentioned at the beginning, depending on your company policy with regards to software update, it could be that you have earlier version installed at your site, and therefore this functionality will not work. This is about the ability of running the if-then macro statements in open code, so outside the macro mend wrapper. This could be very useful in situations like where you want your SAS code to be conditionally or dynamically executed, depending on the occurrence of a specific event. Like the example in this slide, where before making the proc means, I wanted to make sure the dataset ADLB exists. For example, if a previous part of the code, for example, a previous part of the code maybe ended with an error, and therefore the ADLB dataset not generated. There are, however, a few limitations. For example, your if-then must be followed by a do-end block for the statement that you want to conditionally execute. And the same is true for any statement that follow the optional else branch of the condition. And also, you can't have any nesting of multiple if-then constructs. If you need that flexibility, you can do that, but within a macro mend wrapper. Another interesting improvement in SAS macro with SAS 9 is the availability of the in-boolean operator, which was not available until now. For example, assume you want to check in your macro if the user has correctly specified a required parameter, meaning the select parameter has a valid and expected set value. Before SAS 9, you will need to check each individual possible value with an OR operator. With SAS 9, you can make now use of the in operator and therefore shorten your code. There are also now several alternatives to SAS macro in SAS 9 that let you choose among more advanced technologies for problem solving and data manipulation. I listed here some of these technologies, and again some good papers if you want to know more. Reaching the end of my presentation, there are of course many other enhancements which I of course could not cover in my presentation today due to time limitation. I have, for example, in mind all the new ODS destination and the functionality added in SAS 9, together with the ODS graphics or the improved integration with the Microsoft Office application, and of course many new or improved procedures. But for some of these enhancements and others, stay tuned and wait for my paper to be available on the PHUSE platform. Meanwhile, see here some cool references I also use in my selection of the most interesting improvements made by SAS with SAS version 9. And if you have any question, do not hesitate to contact me.